And we are back, episode 248, Better on Draft podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the news segment, December 4th, brought to you by our sponsors, North Center Brewing over in Northville, Michigan. And of course, Zatuna Liquor over in Rochester Hills. Go check them out. We appreciate them. Guys, you can listen to us live when we're doing the news, betterondraft.tv and facebook.com/betterondraft. You can find us on all of our social medias, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Better on Draft, of course, on Twitch and Untapped. That is BOD Podcast, BODPODCAST. Going around the horn real quick. Wendy, what are you drinking?
I am still drinking the King Sue.
Wendy still got the King Sue.
It is
Daniel,
delicious.
Still working on the vodka soda.
still working on the vodka soda. Matthew changed shirts for us. Matthew, what are you drinking?
So I want to put a shout out. I've got this Blue Marble Ultra Premium Seltzer. It's probably just some garbage bag seltzer that I found at the grocery store. Um, but the one thing that I find as a seltzer fanatic as myself is all the seltzers have this flavor in them to hide the mask of the alcohol. You know, you got the black cherries, the lemons, whatever. Even the White Claw has a pure, but it still kind of has a kick to it. This Blue Marble has what's called the pure love, which could be sexual, but I don't take it that way. And there is no kick to it. It's straight. There's no flavor. It's just a hard seltzer. This might be the best hard seltzer I've ever had. This Pure Love by Blue Marble. So if you're into just a standard hard seltzer without all those stupid artificial flavors, this might be it for you. And if you're like me and you want to mix a cocktail with it, you know, maybe put a Norton Aquavit with a seltzer, which I might be doing in segment 3. This is the exact seltzer to do. So, Blue Marble Ultra Pure Love. Let's do it.
Well, usually segment 2 is Robert with the news, but it is me with the news because Robert is not here. And one of the first things I wanted to bring up is that beer TV host, comedian, and entrepreneur Zane Lamprey was named the Craft Beer Marketing Awards inaugural 2020 Man of the Year. Now, Matt, I know how much you're a fan of Zane Lamprey. He was on our show, which I am happy to have surprised you with that because you kind of walked in not knowing he was calling in.
It's
That's
so much fun.
episode 168. That was a year and a half ago, where he calls in to talk about the travel and never doing a show here in Michigan. But when you think about beer hosts, you know there have been plenty of beer shows. There are plenty of alcohol shows. You had Insomniac with Dave Attell. What? And this question goes to Matt first. Is that what do you like so much about Zane Lamprey that you think got him this 2020 Man of the Year award?
I don't. I think it's probably long overdue because I think when we talked to Zane, he was probably done drinking. And in
This
fact,
is the inaugural, so it was the first time ever.
actually, the guy that used to get super drunk on his show, Steve McKenna, is now sober. So like he went from, you remember Happy Gilmore, the homeless guy that was the caddy?
Yeah.
That was Steve McKenna, and now he's all clean shaven and like living a proper life. So, um, I liked Zane because of two reasons: A, I like to drink, and B, I like to think that I'm going to travel, even though I probably won't. So he would always take me to like places that I've never heard of, and after he drank, he would always go to the locals and try their local hangover cure. So it was super about the culture, but it was just a way to infuse, you know, a way that we all know, you know, drinking into a local culture. So it was so much more a travel show than it was, you know, him just getting bombed and shit faced at places. I hesitate to say Anthony Bourdain because I think he was the only other person who ever really did that. But I kind of, I don't know. Since you know Anthony took himself, it's always been really hard on me because I don't think anybody would ever have done anything except trade whatever they had for the life of traveling the world, drinking beer with anybody that wanted to drink beer with you. So to take yourself like that, I've always felt bad about Anthony Bourdain, but I think he's the only other person that I could ever put on a level of Zane Lamprey because you could watch him, like you can still watch him on Netflix right now, Zane Lamprey, or actually no, Anthony Bourdain, and watch him travel the world, drink everything. I mean, he had a beer with Obama, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, but nobody drank beer with Clinton or Bush or Trump or Gore or whomever. So it was like a barrier that those people that are like the con man would break. So um, I always thought that like if I had $1 billion, Zane Lamprey is the life that I want to live, or Anthony Bourdain. So um, I don't know, maybe that's a weird insight to my psyche, but yeah.
That is exactly the life I want to live.
Well, thinking of all of these, you mentioned Anthony Bourdain, you mentioned we talked about Zane Lamprey, but what is, and this is a question to all of you guys, what is a TV show or website or whatever that you follow when you're looking for places to go in another city? Because I'll start off with myself, as I did a lot of traveling over the past handful of years, did a lot of time in the West Coast, Seattle, Los Angeles, DC, Baltimore, New York, Florida, Houston. So everywhere that I went, like I wouldn't just type in Yelp and be like best restaurant. Like I kind of what my
How
goal
you get
was
burned.
my goal was to find the locale place. And speaking of, what was the name of the bar across the street from your old apartment, Dan?
Tempe Tavern.
Tempe Tavern. So like places like that are very like you get the local people, the local feeling, the local like grouping. Like you're not going there because it's going to be this huge crazy experience. You're going there because that's where the locals go. So whenever I went to all of these cities, like when I went to San Francisco, like I went to some dive bar that had, really bad karaoke, but like, the customer service was great, the booze was cheap. That's how I look for those types of places. So I go towards the David Tell's Insomniac. I go towards some of these like looking for these dive bars. But what about you guys? Like when you're traveling or when you're looking for a new place to go, how do you decide where you want to go? Like what website or personality influences you?
Well, I don't really have any TV shows or anything like that have influenced me. I use a lot of the social media groups that I'm in to find out about what the people in that area are doing and drinking and where they want me to go. I also I like to belly up to the bar. I think you can learn a lot about the area by talking to the people who are serving you your drinks. And it never fails that I find amazing places based on the recommendations of the person who's been serving me.
What about you,
With
Matt?
Wendy, I think that I think I've learned in my travels that the bartenders typically know where the best drinks are. And not only that, but they're willing to take you and introduce you, especially if you're out of town.
Yep.
I'm one of those dorks that went Greek in college, so I have a pretty extensive network to where. So I mean, I told right before we went to air, I'm going to Scottsdale just because I want to get out of fucking Michigan for a warm, sunny time as opposed to this garbage that I'm dealing with in Michigan. So I contacted a couple of friends that went from Central and are now in Scottsdale. So we're gonna go golfing and we're gonna do the whole hey, check this out. So I think Wendy was 100% right. It's find the locals and just do what they do as opposed to getting stuck in the pamphlet, like one of the 5 pamphlets at the Days Inn. Like, don't do that. Like, I remember one of my first days in real estate. Like, I showed up at a hotel to show somebody else real estate, and there were some Romanians in the house, or Ukrainians rather, in this hotel in like a slum of Detroit. And they're like, we're here to see all the ruins of Detroit, like we were fucking ancient Egypt. So, all right, well, enjoy, but we're a current area. So I think Wendy's 100% right. It's find the people, belly up to a bar, tell them that you're new, offer to buy them a beer, ask them where you should go, and they'll take you out with their friends, and you'll probably have a better time than if you were to like plan it with a Trip Advisor or Yelp or whatever, just because you'll have an authentic time too. It's not necessarily just about where you go, but it's about how you go. You could go to a shitty dive bar, but if you're there with good people, it makes the experience. Like the place, Ken, I don't know if you ever went to Fremont Brewing when you were in Seattle, but I went to, I got out of a bad breakup as this was well chronicled in 17. In 18, I went there and I had an alt, and I said, Ken, you're going to love this. And I think you probably went there 2 years later and you had their alt, and it's probably one of your favorite beers while you're on the trip. So I think it's all about just experiencing the moment when you're in it, as opposed to all the planning and all that, stuff that our parents might have done.
What about you, Dan? Because a lot of these places that I've been to usually have been suggestions from you, and these are not like mainstream bars you would see a banner or a commercial or anything like that. They're just a small time bar, in whatever city that we're in.
Usually those are places I've learned from people around the area, honestly. The only show I've ever been or used to find places has been Triple D on Food Network, because that never lets you down, as far as any of those restaurants go. But honestly, every place I've ever suggested to you or talked about, I've either just stumbled across it myself or someone local told me about it.
Well, I think Wendy brings up a really valid point, and it's the whole like bellying up to the bar, because when you have that type of personality, and this is something that I'll give to you everyone before we go, because I've mentioned it a handful of times on this show, and it's my trip to Asheville, where I randomly ran into the marketing director of Diageo in Baltimore, and he's there for research and development, and I just shot the shit with him for a beer while I'm at Wicked Weed, and I wound up hanging out with him the entire night, meeting a bunch of people, because his credentials, having that Diageo, he can go around and be like, hey, I'm with the Guinness brand who is opening up a brewery in the U.S. I want to check out your facility. So I got to see like the Funk Room, like a nice tour of the Funk Room. Like, I think being sociable, but at least asking that question, where should I go next? Because a bartender wants to tell you where you want to go next, because they know they don't have your attention for the next beer. But if they could dictate you, send you to a place that they are going to go, or they want you to go, I think Wendy, has that as a great point, is just asking them, where should I go next? This is my only time in Seattle. I lied how many times. I couldn't tell you how many times I told someone it's my only time in Seattle. I'm like, where should I go next? And that Fremont, like Matt, you mentioned, and that's when I got a chance to tour the Ballard area, and that was one of the first places I stopped, because I'm like, I want to try this one beer before I get tanked and I take an Uber back to my hotel, is because I want to try this one beer. And it was the same when I went to Machine House in Seattle too. I'm always curious what people think when it comes to how they get to these places, what makes their decision. And Dan, diners, drive-ins, and
Dives.
yeah. Sorry, you said Triple D, and I'm like, I know the show, but I've never seen the show.
It could also have been a porno, so I
Yeah,
love it
I
when
guess.
you're watching that show and somewhere that you've been and loved shows up, and you're like, I just think that's amazing. I love it every time.
The only true show that I've watched that has gone through that kind of stuff is that Bar Rescue. Like, I've watched the
Shut it down! Shut it down!
Those, that's I actually, I think it's funny you bring that up, because if you try to go to those bars, 9 times out of 10, they've gone back to being shit tier.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We have a few of them around here. It just went to complete ass if they're even still open. It's hard to believe that he puts all this money into those places just for them to fail again.
Well,
There's one of them where they order a Guinness, and he takes a sip of the Guinness, and the guy starts like violently vomiting. Like, come on, really? Guinness is never that bad.
I've had some dirty line Guinness, and that's never been that bad. But those breweries, that show gets so much money from the sponsors, like One Touch and Harbor Touch or whatever companies that's sponsor. Like, they not only give out free hardware, but they give out free nearly everything. Like, there's a local guy who did the handful of Michigan bar rescues, and he wound up doing most of the work for free for security cameras. But this is the same guy who, like, it got him a deal with like the major ice company, like Igloo or whatever, that makes ice, and they like the amount of money that these people can make from that show is ridiculous. But yeah, Taffer ain't spending any money on that show. That's for damn sure. And
That's a product placement.
That show is faker than Flip vs. Flop, than the real estate shows. Like, that show is that is the fakest show I think ever.
It's funny because it used to be more realistic if you watch the earlier seasons. Then it just turned into him screaming and ridiculous stories going on that didn't even make sense.
Well, there's no good segue, so I'm just gonna.
And his wife is way too hot for him. His wife is way too hot for him.
We live in Michigan, and each one of these aluminum cans costs us 10 cents. So the deposit happens. There is a lot of money. Year after year, the deposit return has been lower and lower, and I'm sure 2020 is going to be the lowest just because of how COVID is, including limitations and lines at places, and a lot of places not coming back. For us in Michigan, what do you think would be the best solution for the deposit to not only keep up recycling as it used to be, but also, get rid of all these aluminum cans for people?
Get rid of the deposit. Just trash
No,
them. Recycle them in your garbage.
I disagree. So I saw a meme probably 4 or 5 years ago that says Michigan has a 97% recycle rate
It's
of
it's
their
down to
aluminum
about
cans.
it's down to about 90.
So I mean, that's really still super good. Um, I think that the rule should be so. Having worked for somebody who sells beer and collects beer, the distributor that I work for, when we picked up um, cans from a Kroger, a chain store, a Meyer, whatever you want to call it, they wouldn't give us the cans. They would stamp them and send them to the state. So my thought is, and it might kill small chains or small, Zatuna liquors, if you will, but a Kroger shouldn't just take the cans that are sold at Kroger. It should take any aluminum can that's sold in the state of Michigan. Because I know it's going to kill them on money, on the front end. Because if you take a toppling Goliath, but you don't sell it, you don't collect the 10 cents from the distributor, so you can't pass it on. But you get the money back from the state, and you're getting the money. You're putting the money in the consumer's hand, who's going to then spend probably that 10 cents in your grocery store. So I think the large chains, Kroger and Myers specifically, even Walmart, should probably take any distributed beer at their facility because they get the write-off from the state without fuss. And that would allow all of us to take it back more easily. And maybe they change the fucking bin more than once a week to where it's not always blinking red. Like it doesn't make them money. I get it. So they don't really want to help that part of their business. But for fuck's sake, if there's a line out the door that says, I've got money to give you, let's do it. Because all that money, when you take 4 garbage bags worth of cans, you take that money and 9 times out of 10, spend that money in that grocery store. So why not? Or it just doesn't make sense to me.
Because you don't take bottles back unless you're going grocery shopping.
Yeah, and that money's going into the grocery store, so it's not like they're losing money. They're making the money in a different part of the till, and if it's produce, it's like huge returns. So it should almost be bring everything back to us. We'll make it work. Like I can't tell you the amount of times where I've had to fight a White Claw because I put a dent in the can, or a Miller Lite, or something that I got at a Meyer that I couldn't get at a Kroger, or vice versa, where they wouldn't take it. And it's all
I guess the question is that obviously Michigan's got the 10 cent, but not many states have, the 5 cent in comparison to states that don't have a deposit at all. Why do we do it versus other states don't?
to keep the cans out of our Great Lakes.
Yep.
Okay.
We should be the greenest state in the country because of the amount of water that we have in and around us. And I feel like it's a good example of being one of those modeling the right ways. Like you see that a lot of car companies are going electric, not only because it's good for the world environment and all the bullshit, but also because that's what the consumers want. And I think that's kind of what Michigan has done. Do we even know when the 10-cent deposit started?
I don't know, but while I look that up, I want to kind of take this over to Dan because in Arizona there is no deposit.
Nope, not at all. We throw them in the recycling or throw them in the garbage. That's all you got to do.
So I have a point or something I want to say about the recycling thing, because I think if our recycling programs were actually better, like in our local towns, my dad spent when they first introduced recycling in Garden City, my dad spent like the whole week, separating everything out, making sure everything was good. The very first pickup after that, the garbage truck came and took the recycling. They didn't even take the garbage, they took the recycling. He was like, "That's it. I'm not doing it. I spent all that time and they're not even separating it." There's a lot of cities in the area that are discontinuing their residential recycling programs because it's too expensive for them. They're not, it's not, the recycling program isn't working.
So Matt, to answer your question, 1976.
So I just think that like I think we need to model by example. That's just me. And one of the reasons why so few breweries come to Michigan is because they have to put that 10-cent stamp on their cans and their bottles, and they have to have labels. Because I think Michigan and maybe one other state have a 10-cent deposit. Maybe it's just Michigan, but like you have to make it a label just to say Michigan 10 cents. So I think it makes us. I mean, maybe I just sound too cool, but I think it makes us better than fucking Ohio or Florida. Because I go down there and I'm like, and I try to find a recycle bin. They're like, oh, just throw it in the garbage. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's like you can, we can put it in the recycling or refund, all the bullshit. So it's weird when I go to, my dad lives in Florida and I'll go buy a 24 pack and it says $14.99. And I literally give them $15 as opposed to like 25.88 after taxes and fucking deposit here in Michigan. It doesn't make sense. But also, Florida has 8 cans in a 24. They won't sell you a 24 pack of 12-ounce cans either. So they'll sell you a 24 pack 8-ounce cans, which then you look like Andre the Giant with a fucking V8 can. But like every state has this weird ass shit that we go through. And to be honest, I'm willing to pay the 10 cents. I have so many fucking bags of returnables in my basement right now, and I'm willing to pay the 10 cents to know that it's gonna be recycled. And honestly, you know what? I'll probably give it to the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts or ALS or one of those million groups, of charities that could use the funds, especially in a time like today. So, Michigan's one of those charitable states, in part because we have this 10-cent thing. I can give, $80 of fucking returnables I'm never going to take back to, the Ken Kondrashevskis of America, that'll go ahead and give money to, I don't know, Schoolcraft College of Distilling and Fine Arts. Who knows? But I appreciate what the state does, even though it's a slight inconvenience. I appreciate being a part of being it better than the opposite.
I definitely think what you said needs to get done is that we need a not national, but a statewide return SKU list and rules and regulation where like no matter what, if you sell it or don't sell it, like you should be able to return it because you have the thing that sells it. I think it would increase the amount because how many times have you gone to say Kroger and you looked at the recycling bin and how many 10-cent recyclables are in the recycling bin because Kroger doesn't take it back and this person's like, I ain't gonna fucking take this to wherever I bought it.
Yeah, but think about it also, like you got like honestly, Jack Tatuna has been a fucking miracle worker. He gave me a couple of his bags because he gets directly from distributor. He said, "Hey," I asked him, "Hey, I've got a bunch of fucking recyclables. Can I give them to you? I know what goes in what bag because I worked in the industry." He's like, "Yeah, here's a couple of them. Bring them back, and you can sort your own recyclables, and I'll put it on your tab, and we'll call it a day." But Bush's, Kroger, Meijer, Walmart. There's no reason these billion-dollar companies can't give me 10 cents to take a Griffin Claw, even though they haven't cut it into their SKU yet. And you know what? It might cause them to cut that smaller brewery into their SKU. Maybe they'll cut in fucking Oddside Ales into the Walmart SKU where it usually isn't, because they see 100 of them come into the returnables. Maybe that tells them what their drinkers are drinking to open up the SKUs some more. All right, I digress.
That's perfectly fine. I want to go over one more thing because I want an opinion from the Seltzer King. Um, so
Guess my subject.
there was a discussion in a local group, and I kind of want to take it over to you because I believe the popularity of seltzers are not going away. It is not going to slow down as it has with Alco Pops. So your Henrys, your Not Your Fathers, which still are out there. Um, so question number one to you is seltzer beer?
No. Seltzer is seltzer. And Henry's is dead, by the way. I think Henry's is dead.
Is it
Really?
really?
Oh wow.
Yeah, I don't think it's being bought. Seltzer is a new category. Seltzer is what Mike's Hard Lemonade was in the '90s. It's not an FMB, but it's its own category now. It's not a cider. It's not a beer. It's not FMB. It's a seltzer. Seltzer has carved its own category for sure.
Seltzer has carved its own category. All right. And for you right now, December 4th, 2020, 8:28 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Matt Bush, what is the best seltzer maker? Who is the best seltzer maker?
Oh, that's a goddamn hard question. Um, I think White Claw is the Kleenex of of the seltzer category.
Everyone calls
But
seltzer White Claw. Is that
yeah, but yes, but you know what? I think Truly is right there as well. But I think Truly is too diverse in their selection. Truly has their lemonade seltzers, which are lemonade-ish, so they don't have a true seltzer. So I would say seltzer is defined as currently as a White Claw, but I think you'll continue to see new seltzer brands emerge. We talked, to Eric today or this week rather, from Toppling Goliath, who's considering a seltzer. You see other breweries that use vodkas, and you've got our blogger Ed, who talks about what's a seltzer when it's a seltzer base versus a seltzer and a syrup. So it's kind of hard to say what's the best. I bet has a lot of great flavors, and White Claw is probably your number one, which is also the same brand as Mike's Hard Lemonade. But I think True is a really good brand for some of their flavors. Honestly, again, I said this. Whatever this blue lemonade, this blue marble has a great pure flavor. So it really depends on like what your flavor is. God, that was really long and winded, but it's like talking about your favorite IPA world. It doesn't. It's there's so many hops you can make to make that best IPA, and there's so many different ways to make that best seltzer. So I think you're gonna have a lot of competition for the same reason.
All right. Well, that's gonna do it. The 12-4 episode. A interesting array of topics. I appreciate your guys' opinions on Zane Lamprey, 10-cent deposit, and seltzer. We're gonna stick around real quick. We're gonna do King of the Hill. Robert's not here to defend his crown, so we're gonna have a new winner no matter what. And that's going to do it. Better on Draft again, betterondraft.tv, facebook.com/betterondraft. Watch us live. Go check out our website, betterondraft.com. Brand new re-release. Looks very, very pretty. Of course, you can find all of our socials, Better on Draft on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Bod Podcast on Untapped and Twitch. We are not on any other social medias, so definitely just check us out there. That's going to do it. 148 or 248. Jesus, 248's news recorded 12/4/2020. It's going to be released on 12/7. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Matt, thank you again for joining. We do not have a guest next week right now, but I know in 2 weeks we already have Eric Plata from Parent Brewing and Chris Hakery from Austin Brothers, who is going to be coming into the show to record a couple episodes for while we are off. That's it. Stay tuned for King of the Hill, which is only going to be live on facebook.com/betterondraft, and of course our Instagram. That's Better on Draft. Check out our IGTV. No matter what you think of your beer, we think it's Better on Draft. Have a good night. Peace.